Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today for Edible Native Plants of Colorado. We've got some really great speakers that we're excited to hear from. My name is Anna Gray, and I am the Community Engagement Manager for People and Pollinators Action Network, or PPAN for short. For those of you who aren't familiar with our webinar series, we usually host a monthly event. So be sure to sign up for our newsletter and check out our events calendar to keep up with all of our events. And we can put this in the link in the chat for you. And then before we get started, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about us. So we are People and Pollinators Action Network, or PPAN for short, the host of this webinar. We focus a lot on making Colorado a safe haven for all who live here, from people to pollinators. And we do this through grassroots advocacy, education, and outreach, kind of like this webinar. We also do a lot of policy work, community mobilization, and habitat creation. A good example of that work would be our Habitat Fund grants program, which is based on the sales of the Protect Pollinators license plate. And those sales go towards creating pollinator safe spaces while promoting community mobilization. And I did just want to emphasize the significance of the Protect Pollinators license plate. So PPAN championed the legislation that created this license plate, and the majority of the donations for the plate go directly to our Protect Our Pollinators Habitat Fund, which is our small grants program. So by getting a plate, you'll be contributing directly to getting more native plants in the ground, which leads to more pollinators. And we'll also put this link in the chat for you all. So like I said, we have some awesome speakers today. First, I want to introduce you to Idelle Fisher. Idelle is an avid gardener and runs an organic community garden in Denver, where she's worked with the members to create pollinator habitat featuring many native plants. Idelle also has a large organic landscape and garden at home, and recently replaced her front lawn with a native plant bed. She volunteers with peapan and front range wild ones at native plant swaps and in Denver parks to help take care of the city's pollinator beds. Idelle grew up in Thornton, Colorado, and is a DU alumni. In addition to gardening, she paints, watercolors, sketches, and loves taking photos of gardens, homegrown veggies, and pollinators. She runs her own business offering website design and graphic design, and loves working with green clients that are helping to change the world for the better. In fact, she is also PPAN's web designer, and you can check out her website at picklewicks.com, which we'll put in the chat. Our next speaker is on PPAN's board of directors, Robert Greer. Rob is a tenant defense nonprofit attorney by day and a native plant advocate by night. His favorite native plants include western sand cherry, bee balm, and prickly pear. And he grows thousands of native plants each year for our local plant swap and for indigenous groups. Rob takes a special interest in the public health benefits of urban native plants, like shade, water, conservation, local food, storm runoff, and temperature moderation. He also values their benefits for native fauna as well as for their sheer beauty. And like we said, Rob grows thousands of native plants each year, so you can contact him about native plant availability for what he's going to be growing by emailing him, and we'll put that in the chat for you too. Rob is also an alum of UCLA and the University of Chicago Law School and lives in Denver with his wife and 2 young children. Thanks again for being here today. And before I pass it over to Idelle, just a few quick reminders. Please stay muted. Leave your questions in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the presentation, time permitting. We will be recording this presentation and we'll post it to our YouTube channel soon. There's also going to be an email coming out to all of you with the link to the recording and any other resources that our presenters share today. And we also encourage you to make a donation so that PPAN can continue to host this free webinar series. And these donations will really support our education, advocacy, and habitat creation efforts. A donation of any size really does make a difference. So thank you for your consideration. And another way to support this work is by getting that beautiful pollinator license plate. And again, we'll put all these links in the chat for you all. And with that, thank you, and I will pass it off to Idelle.
So yeah, my name's Idelle. Thank you for the nice introduction, Anna Gray. I love working with the people and pollinators and the wild ones and everything. I love growing food. I'm a big vegetable gardener. So the last few years, I've been really getting into the idea of edible native plants. And so I'm going to talk about that. I'm not an expert, but certainly passionate and excited about it and learning new stuff all the time about what you can eat from your natives. So this first slide, I have some photos. There's the nodding onion. I'm a big onion fan. I have Egyptian walking onions that I love growing, and I am growing some nodding onion. They're a lot smaller, not quite as prolific as your cultivated onions, but they taste just as good. You can pick off a flower and eat it, eat some of the leaves, and they have that great onion flavor, kind of like chives. Then serviceberry is another one of my favorites. We have a couple serviceberry trees in our backyard. They were trained as trees, but I'm finding that I think they want to be shrubs because they have slowly died off on the top and they keep shooting out tons of runners. So the last couple years we've been letting those grow, and I'll probably eventually just take out the dying single trunk tree that has just slowly died over time, probably because they don't get much supplemental water. They're not on irrigation. I do water them from time to time when I'm thinking about it, but really they survive without any added water for the most part. And that could contribute to why they're dying back a little bit too. But we'll see as they turn into shrubs if they do well. I also think that they're going to produce a lot more because with a lot more branches and so forth, there's a lot more possibility for fruit. And serviceberries are extremely delicious. Don't grow blueberries, grow serviceberries here. They thrive here, they're native, and you'll really enjoy the fruit. If you can get some before the birds get to them, the birds love them too. Pinyon pine is another one. I haven't personally eaten it, although we all eat probably pine nuts. And that is a tree that can provide nuts, which are very nutritious and a great thing to have growing. Bee balm and sunflowers. I love having wild sunflowers growing everywhere. We have tons of them at the community garden. And bee balm is also a great, beautiful plant. It attracts tons of bees, and you can use it for teas and so forth. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a longer list of a lot of native plants that are edible. I haven't tried and I don't have all of these, but over time I'm hoping to keep planting more and going to the wild ones swaps and getting more of these growing around our community garden and in our yard. There are some photos here too. The prickly pear, which is a highly edible cactus that does really well in very dry spots. And you can see above there are the barbecue tongs used to share these at one of the wild ones swaps last year. They're very prickly, given as their name implies. Rob will talk a little bit more about these and how to eat them, how you can use the pads and the fruits, and even the petals you can put into salads and so forth. So they're a very good, easy, what you might not think of as edible because they're prickly, but they are. So something that has been historically eaten for a long time. Bee balm again with a bumblebee. Let's go to the next slide, please. Just more photos of other various fruits and so forth. Oregon grape is a great one. It's kind of a low growing ground cover, has very sweet smelling yellow flowers in the spring and produces nice berries later in the season that are great for birds. And people also use them to make into jellies and jams. I've tasted them, but I've never used them to make jellies and jams. It's on my long to-do list of things I want to do. Hops, I got these from Rob, and he grows so many native plants for the swaps. And so I got some hops and I put them in a pot because I didn't put them in the ground. I was worried they might spread into the neighbor's yard and so forth. So, because they are very ambitious. So one day I'm going to find a good place for them to put where I can contain them and have them grow in the ground. But for now, they're growing great in a pot with a trellis. So, and you can use the little hops for teas or of course for brewing beer. And Rob will talk about this too. You can eat the shoots, kind of like asparagus, and cook them and eat them that way. Kinnick is a great low growing ground cover that also has berries that can be used for jellies and jams and syrups and things. And it's a nice low growing, low water ground cover that natives, it's hard to find good ground covers sometimes. So that's a good one. And it also is a little slow to start. My dad has hit growing in his yard. It took a few years before it really took off, but now it's doing great. Smooth sumac is a kind of shrub tree that grows natively here as well. This is a photo actually from the Pine Junction area, and these are just dried berries, but you could actually use the berries, soak them in cold water, and when they're fresh, and it creates kind of almost a lemonade, sumac aid, you could call it. So that's kind of fun. I'd like to try that. I don't have any sumacs in my yard, but it's on my wish list. You can also use it to grind, dry them and grind them. You have to sift out the seeds, which are pretty bitter, but to make the lemon flavored sumac spice that is used in Mediterranean foods. The last one here is chokecherry. It's a great kind of tree, not a huge tree. Grows very easily, even reseeds very easily. I always find little baby chokecherries in our yard and I bring them to the plant swaps. But the fruit is very good too, but you got to wait till it's very ripe, almost black before they get kind of sweet. They're kind of tart sweet, and you need to wait till then. You can just eat them off the vine. Make sure to spit out the seeds, as with all cherry prunus varieties. You don't want to eat too many seeds, although you have to crush them or grind them up really to get to the cyanide inside. But that's why you don't want to eat them, because they do have that. Let's go to the next slide, please. Just some more plants. Rocky Mountain bee plant. Not really used to eat the greens or anything as much, but the seed pods are edible and people use them to put into salad dressings or pesto, stir fries. You can even ferment those green pods to make kind of a caper-like treat. So I'm going to definitely be trying that this summer. Roses or woods rose hips can be made into jelly. Flax is a beautiful blue flowered spring blooming native, and if you wait till the seeds are made, you can actually shake them out onto like a sheet or something and collect them, and you can use them to grind and put into breads or smoothies or oatmeal, just like you would from commercial flaxseed. So it's a pretty neat use of that plant, and they're beautiful in the spring. So I can't wait till they're blooming again this year. Fireweed is also used for tea. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then there's also goldenrod, which can be used as tea. So, and you can also eat the young greens and so forth, but I've only used it for tea. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is, speaking of tea, I have been really getting into teas the last couple of years using native plants. You can use anise hyssop, you can use goldenrod, you can use hops. Hops actually it will create kind of a sedative tea that helps you sleep or reduces anxiety. I have not yet tried it, but I'm planning to this summer. But the goldenrod I've tried, the bee balm I've tried, and the anise hyssop, I really like that. It has a licoricey flavor. I don't like licorice, but I like the tea. And what you can do is just pick the leaves and just put them into a cup and pour hot water over them. You don't have to dry stuff and deal with bags and strainers and all that. You can also just pull out the leaves after they brewed for a bit and bruise them first, or just leave them in. And I usually just leave them in, drink my tea, and then I dump out the last little bit into my compost. Echinacea is also another one. It's known more for the roots, at least that's what I always thought was used, but you can actually use the leaves and the flowers and the stems for tea as well. And one caution on all of this stuff, make sure you're identifying your plants, that you know what you're doing. If you're pregnant, be cautious. A lot of these things can cause issues, talk to your doctor before you try too many of these things, and do or any of them if you're pregnant. But and also consume them in moderation. Try one, see how you feel. Don't drink gallons and gallons of tea right off the bat. Just see how it goes, see if you like it, and if you do, keep using it. But always be cautious and make sure you're identifying all your plants correctly before using them. Next slide, please. This is just a serviceberry slide. As I said, don't grow blueberries here. They just don't grow well here. That you can, but it's hard. And serviceberries are a wonderful alternative that are native and also provide a lot of food for wildlife and pollinators. You can see the beautiful flowers in the spring. Go ahead to the next slide. Another way you can use native plants is with your vegetable garden. So you can have a lot of natives growing in amongst your vegetables, or on the perimeter. You can have hedges. You can find shorter natives to plant maybe in the corners or in the front of your beds, so they're not shading the vegetables behind. Just keep in mind that natives take a lot less water, and if they get a lot of water, they usually can tend to get leggy or even die if they get too rotted with too much moisture. So I like to tuck them into places like a dry corner of a bed or on the perimeter. You can see in this photo, this is where I have a huge stand of Canada goldenrod, and it is a spreader. So the fact that we have the bed next to it helps keep it from spreading, but certainly attracts a ton of pollinators, and birds love pecking around in it. I've seen the leafcutter bees nest, the males sleep in it at night. I love Canada goldenrod. It is a spreader. It's definitely hard to kill, but it's easy to pull out and share. And I usually will pull out the runners and share them at the swaps. I think, oh, and then the last one is this Three Sisters garden. I love the idea of growing Three Sisters gardens. They're an indigenous way of growing three plants that complement each other, usually corn, beans, and squash. But you can also incorporate sunflowers as one of the fourth sisters, or Rocky Mountain bee plant can also be a fourth sister. And then this year I was thinking I'm going to try to get some seeds at one of the upcoming wild ones swaps or whatever, and try to grow buffalo gourd, because that's a very drought tolerant gourd. And while you don't eat the actual gourds, you can roast the seeds. And I do that with pumpkins and squash all the time as it is. They're delicious. So that's a nice way to have something that's a very high protein snack. And you could grow a low water Three Sisters garden with sunflowers, buffalo gourd, and bee plant, and possibly a bean. There are some beans that are native. I don't know them off the top of my head. So that's on my to-do list. Next slide, please. Hedgerows, the idea of growing a nice row or hedge of natives around your garden. Obviously, you wouldn't want that to be in your garden or shading your garden, but it's a great way to provide lots of habitat for birds and all the pollinators and insects, and kind of really increase the wildlife in your yard. Next slide, please. Native plants in pots. As I mentioned, I'm growing hops in a pot. I'm growing Canada goldenrod. It just volunteered in that pot, and I've been letting it grow for several years. They overwinter, which is great. Make sure you're using a pot that can survive the winter. Clay, terracotta clay, the freeze and thaw will usually destroy a pot after a year or two. So use plastic or metal containers, or talk to your nursery about getting containers that are not prone to the freeze thaw damage. And all kinds of natives work in pots. So don't if you feel like you don't have room in your garden, or you only have a balcony, you can still grow native plants in pots. Usually the bigger the better. Make sure you have well draining soil. And again, make sure if they're overwintering perennials, that you're growing it in a pot that can do that. Next slide, please. Other organic ideas for just organic and native gardening in general. Provide water for birds with a bird bath. Make sure to clean it regularly. The robins here love to poop in it, so I have to replace the water every day because I don't want them all drinking out of that. So and make sure to keep it clean. You can clean it with vinegar once a week. They say vinegar and water to kind of disinfect it. Leave your seed heads. You can see this goldfinch on an echinacea coneflower. They love eating the seeds out of this in late summer and into the winter. And then birds forage on these all winter long. So leaving these really provides a lot of food for the birds. And then in regards to pollinators, leaving all the stems also gives those pollinators a lot of insects a place to live over the winter months. So do that. Don't use pesticides or herbicides. Use organic fertilizers only really for your vegetables or your flowers that are non-native because natives don't need fertilizer. That's another great reason to grow them. Compost, incorporating your own compost in your garden is really great for building the soil. Cover your soil, make sure there's leaf cover or mulch over it so that it protects the soil life underneath and also conserves moisture and feeds your soil over time. Also, don't forget to turn off your lights at night. Don't having porch lights and all this are not good for the birds or insects. So use motion detector lights for areas where you need light. There's also yellow bug bulbs that don't attract the moths, so they don't beat themselves to death on the light bulb. And also, if you do have lights, have them point down instead of into the sky. That way birds and other insects and things aren't getting lured down to them or confused by them. Next slide, please. So on this note, make sure you're identifying all your natives. There are tons of books about foraging and native plants, and you can find them at the library. I found these actually at the Denver Botanics Gardens Library, which is a huge library all about garden stuff. They have huge sections on every possible gardening topic you can imagine. Go check it out if you haven't been there. It's amazing. And it's free. You can just, I mean, you have to be a member, but you can check out up to 10 books, which I reached my limit yesterday when I went to go check them out. So check that out. Next slide. There's some more books as well. So use all these resources because there are so many out there. And you want to make sure, again, you properly identify things and then also how to eat things. Make sure that things are ripe before you eat them. Some berries and so forth can be somewhat toxic when they're not ripe. So make sure you read up and learn about these things. And if something tastes super bitter, don't eat it. That's your body and the plant telling you, hey, I'm not edible yet. So keep that in mind. Next slide. This is also another really great resource from the Front Range Wild Ones. They have a blog post that Deb wrote about edible native plants. And in it, there is a link to this great worksheet that kind of goes through all kinds of different natives and how they're used, what their habits are and common names and so forth. Anna Gray, you can just kind of fast forward. I think there's 3 of these. So just keep that in mind. Check it out on the Front Range Gardens website, or sorry, Front Range Wild Ones website. Another thing to keep in mind is that while we love natives, non-natives are also great. So there's all kinds of great edibles that are non-native that are still great for pollinators. Dill is a host plant for swallowtail butterflies. You can see the swallowtail caterpillar here enjoying his meal, and dill is usually so prolific you don't even need to worry about sharing it. Also, lovage gets to be a huge plant, and it's a useful herb. And when it goes into bloom, I always see black swallowtails flying around it, laying their eggs, and you can see the little caterpillar there. Cilantro is also a great one. It blooms. Everybody's like, how do I keep my cilantro from blooming? Well, you don't. It's a flower. So enjoy the greens in the spring or the fall. It usually stays greener in cooler weather. And then once the hot weather gets here, it blooms into these beautiful lacy white flowers that smell good. The bees and pollinators and the predatory wasps love them. And the entire plant is edible, the non-woody stems and the flowers, the leaves, the roots, all of it. So it's a great herb to have in your garden, as well as basil. Let it bloom. You can certainly keep cutting back and pruning it over time, but eventually it's going to go to bloom. And when it does, you'll see that the bees and the pollinators love it. Um, all right, next slide, please. Last kind of thing, eat the weeds. um, there's so many edible weeds, and they're kind of a good substitute for what we consider lettuce and, our salad greens and so forth. There's lamb's quarters, dandelions can be eaten. You can actually fry up the dandelion heads, batter them with a light batter, and fry them in a cast iron skillet for little fritters. Purslane is a really crunchy, mild tasting snack from the garden, and it almost has like a little bit of a lemony flavor. Very good in salads. You can also cook with it. And then you'll see all these others here on this list. There's a lot of weeds that you can eat. So rather than just pulling them, and eat them. Next slide, please. This is just a growing list of some of the nurseries that sell Colorado natives. When you go to your local nursery, ask them about native plants. The more of us who ask, the more likely they're going to start stocking more or even creating native plant sections, which I keep asking my little nursery over here, City Floral, to do. So, and I'm hoping maybe this year will be a year where they have a native section. Next slide. And then lastly, just be part of the community. The Front Range Wild Ones partners with people and pollinators and the Colorado Native Plant Society, and they put on amazing plant swaps. They're free. Everybody comes to share their own extras, but also just to come and get them. If you haven't gardened, or if you don't have any native plants, or if you don't have anything to swap, please still come to these events, because they're all about giving these plants to their homes so that people will have these in their yards. It empowers people to grow native plants. And you don't have to deal with money or anything. You can just come and enjoy and talk to people, learn from them, get tips, find out what plants grow well where, all these sorts of things. They're a great group. And of course, people and pollinators are great. The Colorado Native Plant Society, Permaculture Institution. I'm part of the Herb Society of America, who has a whole section about native herbs. So if you love herbs, check them out. That's a really great group too. So just be part of the community. The more you're involved with all these people, the more you can share and learn from others. So I will now let Rob do his presentation.
Thanks, Idelle. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm Rob Greer. Heard my introduction earlier. So yeah, I want to show people what a xeric, mostly native, mostly edible landscape can look like even in the heat of July. I think there's a common misconception that native plants have to be ugly or spindly or just like a rock garden with a couple cactus in it. No, it can be pretty lush. Um, so this is my backyard in July. There's hummingbird mint. There is non-native dogtooth grass, but it is xeric. There's sand cherry. There's hops in this photo. So I'll get into that in the next slides. So a few different general strategies for foraging native plants. Um, most, well, not most, but a lot of native plants are edible, and people really underestimate just how edible they are. Um, Most plants that make a juicy fruit, you can eat them right off the plant if they're tasty. That's usually the easiest way to forage. You can also dry many of these fruits for later use or preserve them into jams and jellies. Tender new green growth on many plants is edible and quite tasty. This can be a little bit trickier than fruits, and you have to be a lot more careful with plant identification. You can also eat edible seeds like sunflowers or hackberries. There's lots of dense nutrition if you use the right plants. You can sprout those seeds and eat the green sprouts. These have a different nutritional profile and can be a good way to get things like water-soluble vitamins in the middle of winter. Um, Roots are another great strategy. I love sunchokes. There's also a local native potato actually that's very hard to get, but is edible after certain processing. And we'll get to some other edible roots here in a little bit with our presentation. Next slide, please. It's important to never eat anything that you can't positively identify, especially if it's not a fruit. There are native plants that are deadly around here, mainly water hemlock and death camas. I think a critically useful resource here is Sam Thayer's Field Guide to Edible Wild Plants. It can help you identify most of these plants and has notes about how to prepare them and when to collect them. I think it's the gold standard for native plant foraging in North America, but our presentation is focusing specifically on stuff that's either native to Colorado or otherwise good choices for native yards on the Front Range. Next slide, please. And here's a photo of the book cover. Next slide. Another great resource is Alexis Nelson, also known as Black Forager on social media. She's wonderfully entertaining and has a lot of extremely practical tips accompanying her high-level plant science and botany. If you don't follow her on Instagram or Threads or I forget if she's still on X, give her a look-see. She's great. Next slide, please. So now let's get into some of these native plants. So this is a picture I took yesterday of native plants in my yard, native hops specifically. The tender new growth is edible like asparagus. I sauteed it up uh, in a saucepan with some olive oil, hit it with some salt and some lemon juice, and it was really quite delicious. It can be eaten raw, but it's a bit raspy. The cooking helps with the texture. But yeah, this is a great plant. And you can also use the hops fruits like you would any other hops to brew beer, etc. Next slide, please. You can see in the back of that picture the hops growing up on the pergola. So that's just kind of what it looks like. The hops are edible at this stage as well. Just the tender new growth on the very tips of it, and that's edible usually through about the middle of summer. Next slide, please. Western sand cherry is absolutely phenomenal for this region. It can grow in the most sun-baked of sites. It's really not picky. It's beautiful, like really year-round. Mine are just starting to bloom in my backyard in central Denver. And the summer foliage is really quite lush. It turns into a nice burgundy in the fall. And even in the winter, the kind of red stems just add like a really nice pop of color to a winter garden. Um, these fruits are quite large and edible mostly in July. Make sure that when you eat them, you wait until they're uniformly dark purple all the way around. If there's any blush on them, they're not ripe yet, and they will be a bit astringent and just unpleasant to eat. Um, but when they are perfectly ripe, they're extremely productive plants and really quite tasty. So next slide, please. So this is what they look like in bloom, just like these big showy branches covered with flowers. Really nice. Mine will look like that probably in about a week. Next slide, please. Close up of the flowers. Really great for local pollinators. Just awesome stuff. Next slide, please. And yeah, I just want to stress how productive these plants can be. Um, this is a plant that I took this picture of my backyard. My plant here does not get any supplemental irrigation. It's in one of the most sunny spots in my yard. And this is what it produced last year on just one branch as far as fruits. Extremely productive plant. It's really incredible what native plants are able to do in really tough conditions. Next slide, please. This plant is known as false Solomon seal. You'll see this in the foothills a lot. It can also be grown in shady areas. This is a great plant to grow in dry shade, which is a tough plant for a lot of people, or a tough spot for a lot of people. This is edible at a couple different stages. You can eat the spring shoots that come out, like asparagus. It's actually fairly closely related to asparagus in the lily family. You can also eat the berries that it produces in the fall or the roots. Next slide, please. This is a close relative known as starry false Solomon seal. It's edible in the same ways, but it tends to be not as large of edible parts. So I think the false Solomon seal that's not starry is probably a better candidate. But this is also fun to have around. Next slide, please. New Mexico locust. I love this one. It has edible flowers. Don't eat the foliage, don't eat the pods. But this is like it's like a gourmet food. It's fresh, it's hearty, it's sweet, it's aromatic. It's kind of like like a delicate crunchiness. Um, Absolutely phenomenal. If you can find this around, and there are a couple of spots in Denver where this grows wild even. It's just fantastic. Next slide, please. This is what it looks like on the tree. I think this was coppiced or something. This is from Taos, New Mexico, but we can easily grow this here as well. Next slide, please. Prickly pear. This is probably my favorite thing to grow just in terms of the sheer biomass that you get off of this stuff in a small space. I have a cactus garden over here that's probably about 5 feet by 10 feet. And it'll just produce an absurd amount of pads and fruits. This photo is probably taken, I would say, in middle of May of last year. And this is what you're looking for is the tender new growth. You can see that it's a different color for the terminal pads. And you want it in that kind of meristem phase where it's still pliable and tender. You do want to make sure you really are careful with the glow kids on this. Glow kids are little like hairs. So not even necessarily like the large spines, but like smaller hairs can really irritate your mouth and throat if you accidentally ingest them. There's great YouTube videos on how to prepare prickly pear online. It's also known as nopal or nopales in Spanish. This is a really important culinary uh, resource in Mexico and for indigenous people throughout the Southwest. Just really fantastic. It kind of has the texture of a green bean or something. It's extremely nutritious, very high in protein, very high in water soluble vitamins, etc. Really, really great food plant. Next slide, please. And this is what it looks like cooked. It's just excellent in a taco. It can have like a tangy flavor depending on when you harvest it. One of its strategies for conserving water is um, it doesn't open its pores in the daytime. It closes them in the morning and stores carbon dioxide as carbonic acid in its tissues to photosynthesize during the day. And what that means is if you harvest it in the earlier parts of the day, it has a tangier taste to it from the carbonic acid, which I think is really quite pleasant. But it's just a fun little preference that you can have as far as how you harvest it. And yeah, just excellent in tacos, sauteed. You can get a really nice Maillard reaction off of the protein and the carbohydrates in the plant. Really, really nice. Next slide, please. As Idelle said, the flowers are also edible, the petals at least. Um, Similar to the New Mexico locust, just like a very fresh flavor, delicate. When you pick these, try to pick out the outside petals so that the reproductive parts can still create a fruit. Because as the next couple slides will show, that's also really nice. Next slide, please. So there's another prickly pear flower that's edible. I'd probably pick 4 or 5 edible petals off of that. Next slide, please. Just a gorgeous plant. The sweat bees go nuts for this in June or so, early June. Phenomenal plant. Next slide, please. Um, this slide is interesting because it kind of has both the edible flower stage and this is kind of on the back end of when you probably want to eat the pads. Just kind of like spot test the terminal pads for flexibility. It's really a matter of preference. If a prickly pear species is not inedibly bitter, which some are, but this is not. This is Eastern prickly pear. Um, it's just a matter of texture preference, how late you want to eat them. Next slide, please. And the fruits are, as you can see from this photo, just incredibly productive, even with very low water conditions. This was taken at the Turnverein Garden over on 16th Avenue. And these fruits can last almost half the year, honestly, on the plants. So they'll ripen up in about October. And this year I was able to collect a good number just today. And the way that you want to prepare these, you really want to make sure you get the glochids off. And a good way to do that is to put a number of them into like a metal sieve, and put that over like a gas flame to burn the glochids off. I'm gonna have one right now, actually. These are really quite tasty. Mm. They taste a lot like watermelon. They're sweet, but not cloyingly so. There's no tartness to them. Um, they're great as like a summer snack if you pop them in the fridge. Um, just really nice. And you can make a nice syrup out of it. You've probably seen prickly pear margaritas on various menus. It's pretty easy to turn that into syrup. Just great stuff. All right, next slide, please. Okay. So you can kind of see my finger in the corner there. Some of these cold hardy native or native-ish cactus varieties can have pretty sizable prickly pears on them. I think this is an Opuntia engelmanni, Engelmann's prickly pear. And yeah, I just love it. Next slide, please. Piggy pine, we talked a little bit about this one. There's a staple crop of indigenous peoples in especially southern Colorado. Still is. And in New Mexico, where I spent some time growing up, it's very commonly used as kind of like a creamer in coffee, almost like a hazelnut liqueur or something like that. Imparts a really nice nutty flavor and fattiness. Just really wonderful plants. It'll grow under really intensely sunny conditions. And yeah, we love an edible tree. Next slide, please. And here's what a pinyon pine looks like in its full splendor. Next slide, please. Wolfberry, also known as American goji. The fruit is edible when ripe, and it has a similar flavor to like a cherry tomato, which it's related to. They're both nightshades. Um, Really great plant. Takes a beating in the sun and is extremely xeric. Next slide, please. Sunflower, this is obviously very identifiable. Many of the wild varieties don't produce the same number of seeds or size of seeds, but I like to use them as sprouts in the spring so I can get something green to eat that has been growing on my property. Even in like the depths of February. And I think that's a nice strategy. Throw it into soups. Just really nice. Other aspects of the plant are marginally edible, but I would personally stick with the seeds and the sprouts. Next slide, please. That's Great Sand Dunes National Park, by the way. This is also taken in Great Sand Dunes National Park. This is American currant. The fruits are edible. This is a level 1 foraging. You go out somewhere and you see something that looks like a tasty fruit, and it is, and that's great. They taste really nice. Next slide, please. Don't do that in the national park, but if you see it elsewhere, um, maybe go for it. Bee balm. I love this one. The essential oil profile on this is almost identical to oregano, which has a lot of overlap with like Thai basil and stuff like that as well. And I use it really for both contexts. I use it in Italian food. I'll throw it into stir fries where it is really, really nice. It really imparts that like kind of oily, fragrant um flavor and aromatic profile. Really fantastic. The flowers are just gorgeous. If we could go to the next slide. Just really quite lovely. Next slide, please. This is also at the Turnverein Garden, kind of a showstopper of a plant. And when you have something that just smells nice and looks nice, and can take a beating in terms of growing it in tough spaces. Wonderful. Next slide, please. Uh, Autumn sage is also kind of in this category. The leaves are edible as a fragrant herb. The aromatic profile is nearly identical to culinary sage. You can use it in poultry seasoning. I make a brown butter sage sauce with this that is really, really nice. And unlike Eurasian sage, this evolved in North America where we have hummingbirds. So it's got this really intense red color and is kind of a hummingbird magnet. One of the best things you can grow to attract hummingbirds to your yard. Next slide, please. Naughty onion Idelle talked about quite a bit, so I'll kind of keep it short. Yeah, I like to chop it up as a chive and throw it into an omelet, kind of French cuisine style. It works really well there. The bulb is a bit smaller, so I like to use it as kind of like a spring onion as well. It's not going to be like a Vidalia or something just due to its size. But it's got a really lovely onion flavor, almost garlicky or um, um, what's the other one I'm thinking of? Anyway, yeah. Uh, Here's some nodding onion scapes. So if you know how to use like a garlic scape or something like that, you can use these very similarly. Next slide, please. Blue flax, throw it in your oatmeal. Omega-3s, what's not to love? Next slide, please. American plum. Wow, what a great plant. So similar to the Western sand cherry, this is something that produces a ton of fruit. Um, with American plum, it's a bit tricky because the fruits tend to drop from the plant pretty quickly after ripening. So there's usually only about a 10-day window where you can pick them off the tree. But these are just absolutely delectable when you find good ones. I compare it to a mango. The flesh on the inside is yellow and very sweet, and it has this like fairly thick tart red outside or like red or blush. So it's very much like a Mexican mango or a Haitian mango. But it's native here and we can grow it here. And it also, produces wild profusions of white flowers in the springtime. If you are ever like in the foothills out here in April and you see just shocks of plants with white flowers covering them entirely, it's probably going to be an American plum or perhaps a choke cherry. Next slide, please. And yeah, these things get pretty big. They can, get to be an inch and a half across. And yeah, it's great to just like when they're really going, pop in a bunch. Um, because of the short life on the branch, I would recommend sheet drying them for later use. That's what indigenous peoples have been doing for quite a while now. Which is a great strategy for using these plants, these fruits. Next slide, please. Silver buffalo berry. I would say this one is a marginally edible, soapy tasting berry because of the soapiness. It's soapy because of the saponins in the berry, but because of the saponins, it can be whipped into like a meringue-like texture and sweetened. So it was historically used as a dessert in that way. It also has fantastic pollinator benefit because it blooms so early. Mine actually bloomed for most of the month of January here because it was so warm. But in a more typical year, it will also bloom even in February. So it's a great way to get pollinators into your yard. It also fixes nitrogen, which is awesome. Next slide, please. Serviceberry, awesome. Several varieties. This is what it looks like in bloom. Next slide, please. Huge profusion of fruits, usually in like early to mid-June. It's also known as Juneberry. There's a number of different varieties. This one looks like a kind of Midwestern cultivar. Next slide, please. Utah serviceberry is very common in the Rocky Mountains, and is I think a good bet for the Front Range specifically, just because it's so drought tolerant. The leaves are a bit paperier, and the fruits are, I think, a bit better quality than what you get in the Midwest. This is more of a concentrated flavor, usually because you don't have to water it as much. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's great. It's like a blueberry mixed with a pear. Oh, there's a robin in my backyard. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Uh, uh, We love a service berry. Next slide, please. Fremont's barberry is really underrated for a food crop out here. It's just a really lovely taste on the berry. The flowers are really quite early, usually like early April, late March. And it's pretty indestructible from a drought tolerant standpoint. This thing will grow in like southern Utah. It doesn't really care if it gets like 5 inches of rain a year. Desert barberry is a close relative that has a very similar flavor profile on the fruits, sweet and tart. Next slide, please. Chokecherry, Idelle talked quite a lot about this one. Fantastically productive plant, similar to the sand cherry or the American plum. It's got kind of an unfortunate name for a great plant. You want to wait until these fruits are uniformly black, otherwise they're astringent. It's kind of a common theme. It makes a really wonderful jelly. This is perhaps the most important plant that you can grow for birds in our area, because so many caterpillar species eat the leaves, and the birds need the caterpillars for their babies. And also, fruit-eating birds will go nuts for these. So they can be a bit unruly in the yard because they sucker. There are non-suckering varieties that you can get, or if you have quite a bit of space, you don't mind the suckering. It's just absolutely fabulous for wildlife. Next slide, please. Flowers are great, kind of lilac-y. Next slide, please. Just, I mean, I love this kind of stuff. Next slide. It's another robin again. And these can get to be about 15 feet tall out here. So just creating real great habitat for local wildlife. Next slide, please. Golden currant is one of my favorites. It's really easy to grow, really easy to eat. It's, it's got an edible fruits. This is what the foliage looks like. Next slide, please. The flowers are really nice. Mine are going to flower probably in about 2 weeks. And when they get going, the flowers smell like clove. It's also known as clove currant. Not all of them have that smell to them, but the ones that do, it's pretty intoxicating. Next slide, please. Just really nice flowers. Next slide, please. And the fruits are really tasty. They're sweet and tangy like a blackberry. They'll fruit even in very dry years. They take a wide variety of sun conditions. They'll tolerate significant shade or full sun. Really quite easy to grow. I think a quite attractive plant. Mine is leafing out right now and will be blooming fairly soon. I love it. Next slide, please. Wax currant has a different flavor. It's not as tangy, so it's maybe a bit more of an insipid flavor, which I don't mind personally. They call it wax currant because it kind of has this jelly bean-like texture, which is really fun. And these are all over the place in the foothills, and they can grow in almost full shade. Next slide, please. Ephedra, those red things, they look like fruits. They're not botanically fruits. They're technically a cone because this is in some kind of conifer relative. But they culinarily are very much fruits. They're sweet and fruit-like and quite tasty. Make sure you don't eat the seeds on this one. Next slide, please. Physalis, ground cherry. Sometimes you might see ground cherries at a farmer's market. There's a number of different native species on this, closely related to tomatillo, and just a fun little plant to have. They often volunteer in people's yards, so be on the lookout for that. Next slide, please. Oregon grape, edible fruit of variable quality, early flowers. But when the fruits are nice, they're really uh, quite pleasant. It's like a sweet, a little bit sour, very fruity taste to them. And yeah, when you get a good bush, you can eat them right off the plant, and it's really quite scrumptious. Next slide, please.
This all looks so delicious. I'm getting hungry. We are at our time with 1 o'clock and we have to use our Zoom link for another meeting that starts right now. Um, so unfortunately, I think we do have to stop here. But this was so amazing. I'll just flip through. Yeah, Oregon grape. Is this your, I think this is your last slide. But yeah, thank you so, so much, Idelle and Rob.